Jake Stuart with the National Sports Media Association. Today, I'm joined by Kentucky Sportscaster and 2021 winner, a legend, Fred Cowgill. Fred, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure, Jake. I sometimes think when you're called that means you're old, and there's probably, in my case, there's a lot of truth to that. Yes.
Hey, I didn't say that, but I do know that you've been in the industry for a really long time, working for WLKY, covering some of the biggest events from the Kentucky Derby to so much more. I wanted to ask you, though, what first brought you into the industry?
That's a good question. My dad was a huge sports fan, and his father before him, my grandfather. And from the time I was little, we'd go to games or we'd be watching a game. And back in the dark ages, when I was little, as an example, Major League Baseball, there was a game a week on Saturday afternoon on NBC. And I can vividly remember sitting there with my grandfather and father keeping score. You didn't have the luxury of following your own team. It was whoever NBC happened to bring up that day, Kurt Gowdy and those guys. It goes way back, but that sort of planted the seed. And as I got older, we kept going to more and more games, moved to outside New York City, became a massive Yankees fan back in the 60s when they were awful. But they were my guys, a New York Giants football fan. But the disconnect for me a little bit at first was the seed of college sports, which is really my favorite. We had season tickets at Army. I think that's really what did it. And 1 year, Tennessee played there. And that resonated by the time I became like a sophomore, junior. I took a journalism class and absolutely fell in love with it. When my dad passed, I asked him, were you worried about me when I was in high school? Because I got the sense that I was sort of drifting. He's like, oh yeah, we were very worried about it. And then you found journalism, and the light bulb went on, and that was the end of that. I became a gym rat for it.
Wow. Wow, it's an awesome story. And Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, you've been a sports director for now 36 years. Clearly, you've been a part of some pretty sweet moments, and just things that come to mind for me in my lifetime span. Obviously, American Pharaoh and the Triple Crown, and obviously so much more. But what events or maybe some moments stood out to you in your coverage so far?
Another good question. Pharaoh certainly is on the short list. One of my all-time favorite pictures. I was never much of a picture guy when I was young because before smartphones, it's much more problematic. But we had a picture of me and Pharaoh. A couple of weeks after he won, that was less than that, after he won the Triple Crown. And it's literally his face and my face together. It's priceless, actually. That is very close to my heart. But, frankly, probably the best, standalone event was Ryder Cup when it was at Valhalla in 2008. And the United States had gone a long time without winning the Ryder Cup. And so it's in Kentucky. And Tiger Woods was hurt out. And a couple of Kentucky guys got in it, Kenny Perry and JB Holmes, and helped win it. And the magical moment, in those days, Valhalla was set up where there was a practice putting green underneath the balcony in the clubhouse, and all the guys up there throwing champagne around and down on us. It's like a Disney movie. I mean, standing there, I'm like, this resonates. I still have that picture in my head. So, Louisville's only the 50th television market, give or take. And certainly we are not a major league sports town. We're more of a college sports town. Really proud of that. And the ratings actually for college basketball off the charts, #1 every year, which really sort of validates that. I always thought that this was going to be a pit stop. Not always, but when I first got here, certainly. In 1986, I thought I'd be here a couple of years. But I love the horses. I love college sports. I love golf. And all those things sort of came together when I arrived in the first few years in the late 1980s. And the station at that time was a pretty modest setup. It began to blossom. And when I had chances to leave, even to go back to New York, where I grew up in the suburbs, this was the dream I didn't know I had. It's not the biggest place in the world. It's not the highest paying place in the world, but I didn't do it for that. I did it because I love it so much. And to find a place where I fit in and had such incredible sports that were tailored to me, exceptionally cool.
And I'm curious too, Fred. I know all the sports you mentioned in some way or another were affected by COVID pretty hard, especially college basketball and horse racing being a few. What would you say? How much did your work change if it did, and how did you have to adjust?
Changed dramatically. March 13th, 2020. I remember that was a Saturday before Selection Sunday. I might be off by a day. I was here at the station doing Sports Saturday, And our news director calls me. She said, shut it down. Tell everybody goodbye. You're going on hiatus. And we don't know for how long. Grab a computer, grab a camera, go home. And in my business model, while I was shooting some and editing a lot, I was not on the front lines every day, but that was the transition to learning everything there is to know about being, a one-man band. Years ago, there was a skit on Saturday Night Live where Al Franken, who was the comedian at the time there with Dennis Miller, in their newscast, used to have a satellite pack on his back, and teasing, Dennis, I'm here at G-Star 4, and that became reality. Technology morphed that quickly, and things like Zoom calls became a way of life. I was really not in the station again for roughly a year, round numbers. They brought us back in about April of 2021. And then I got hurt shooting opening night of high school football in August of 2021. I was shooting right on the edge of the field, the first play from the scrimmage, and a running back took me out, blew out my left knee. So here I was knocked out again. So I've been away from the station in terms of the normal, quote unquote, or the old normal business model for quite some time. But I was finally back here and in stages brought back to what was the old normal on December 13th. So it's been a journey, to say the least. I mean, it's been a haul. So, I've been in TV sports since 1980. I started at CNN. And so it's been round numbers 42 years. And for 40 of those 42 years, it was one way. And then suddenly, things changed a lot technology wise, but in terms of that real business model, just got frankly nuked. And to be back now, I certainly appreciate it a lot more and how fragile our lives are, way more than I ever did before these last 2 years.
I'm sure it has. It's something we've heard from a lot of our winners too. Is just the amount of not only blessings but just appreciation they have for the sports that they cover after dealing with COVID, and to hear about your injury too just brings into another light. How much goes into this work, and how many I guess unexpected turbulences we could face along the way. My next question for you, Fred, I wanted to just bring up. This is your second award from the National Sports Media Association. What does this one mean to you?
Different than the first one. Frankly, until Dave Gorin, who runs the place, as you know, until he became the guy that was running the store, I didn't know much about the organization. And when he took over, I took an interest because of him and my affection for him, my friendship with him. And I thought it was such a noble and honorable thing, which became, I guess, the National Sports Media Association, as it continues to adapt to the changing times and the changing technologies. And so then to win one then, not a whole bunch, after he had taken over the organization, really resonated with me, at least in part because of our friendship, which goes back a long ways. I worked at North Carolina local TV and worked for Hearst and Pulitzer. So that was special, a lot because of our friendship and how hard he was working to bring this organization where it should be on the national stage, funded correctly and all of that. And I really have a passion to this day of trying to help do that. The second go round probably is completely different because of what's happened in the last 2 years to me personally and to our country in general with COVID. I've come to really appreciate this in a way that I never did before. And I thought I had a pretty good grip on that. This has been a dream come true. But to see how quickly it could be all taken away or changed dramatically for not as much fun maybe as it was for a while, gave me a newfound place that all I have is right now. And this award sort of represents that. And I think my friends and peers who voted me in did that at least in part because they knew how hard I've worked since August 20th to get back. Therapy is not a lot of laughs, surgery is not a lot of laughs, but I'm flattered beyond words that I got voted back in again. It's not something that many people get to enjoy, to be a part of, to be honored like this. It is my favorite award of the things that, and I've been blessed to win a number of awards, but this one ranks at the top of the list, I would say, for a whole bunch of reasons, a whole bunch of levels to it, but especially that you're voted in by your peers and the friendships. And at the end of the day, to have done this as long as I have, which is beyond a dream come true, the takeaway for me is the relationships that you develop along the way. And you'll see this as your career blossoms also, that it's those certain people that pop in your head. And that award this time, the first time it was more about Dave, and this time it's more about everybody. It's more about all those people who helped me along the way, and knowing that this may be the last one I ever earn, and this may be the last trip I get to make to North Carolina, and that makes it priceless.
Well, you said it, the first award means a lot. The second one, just goes beyond that. It really is a special honor. I wanted to ask you what you just mentioned too about maybe those people that helped you along the way. You talked about getting into journalism at an early age and knowing that was kind of your fit. Who kind of inspired you to get into broadcasting? And is there anybody you want to thank?
Yes, there are many. We could be here quite a while. I'll try to limit it. I think if you're lucky along the way, you have mentors, people who, some of whom you remember their names and some you don't. I mean, when I was in undergrad at Tennessee Knoxville, there was a professor who ran a on-campus cable news operation back when that was a pretty Spartan kind of thing. And I happened to be part of the program on the technical side. And the news anchor got sick. And he asked me, since he knew I had radio experience, at that point I was just in radio, working my way through school. He asked me to fill in as the news anchor, and I did. At the end of the program, he said, if you don't do this for a living, you're nuts. And that was the first time that I really got my arms around that instead of just being a radio personality or doing a radio gig, that I could actually do TV. It changed my life. And unfortunately, I don't remember his name, but my affection for UT to this day stems, at least in part, for the communication school from that man. And there have been many others along the way. Nick Charles at CNN, who was a rock star anchor at the time, in 1980 when I first went there and was just a runner in news, just trying to break into the sports department. He got me in and got me on the air at an age that I probably shouldn't have been on national TV. I was 22 years old. He was a big horse racing nut like me. Great guy. He passed too young from prostate cancer. A guy named Rabin Matthews, who was head of this company's, actually Pulitzer at the time, head of the news operation corporately, and came here to be our GM. What I almost left until he got here, and he took care of me. He was my godfather. And these are the kind of people that you'll be looking for as well along the way. If you're lucky, you have 3 or 4 of them. And Rabin, took me into the next step and for the next, 4 decades. And there are many others, too many to mention here, but I would not be here if any one of those people had not contributed to their part. In the modern day, I mean, even my so-called competitors, which they are also my friends, my golf buddies. Kent Taylor at Wave, who is a former winner of this award multiple times, and who was an intern for me back in the early 90s. Kent Spencer at WHAS, who is another golf buddy competitor, but also a friend. And again, just people who in the modern day have been so supportive, especially when I got hurt. They were right there. And, a lot of television markets, Jake, as you know, that people don't get along. Here it's the exact opposite. I've tried for a long time to be inclusive, to really make it. I mean, who can better understand what we do for a living than the people who we compete against? Our own family members don't really totally understand what we do. But the guy across the street at the other affiliate, he knows what you're doing, and he knows how hard it is. But we're so competitive, sometimes, most times, we lose sight of the fact that we can be friends. I always remember years ago, Boomer Esiason and Joe Montana were buddies, back before it became in vogue in the NFL to be buddies. And Boomer got asked about it once. He was Bengals quarterback. And he's like, who better would understand what I'm going through? Sure, we can toss back a favorite adult beverage or more. And rightfully so. And people are like, I can't believe they're enemies. And no, they were buds. And that's okay. You still want to kick the other guy's butt, and they want to kick mine, but so we can have a beer and understand each other. And to this day, that resonates maybe more than ever.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you bringing up, just the inclusivity of, this industry, because a lot of people do think it is cutthroat and it's, I need to get to that next spot. And in reality, we're all working towards that same goal. And, you spoke a little bit about mentors and people that brought you up, that helped you out along the way. My last question for you, Fred, is, how about some advice for maybe some younger sportscasters getting into the industry? Maybe aside from looking for a mentor, what other advice do you have?
Jake, I think our business is at a real tipping about where it's going to go. And people like you who are the future. I'm all about legacy now. And giving back and keeping that back door open. Years and years ago, before I began getting these breaks, I was working for IBM in the summer because my dad worked there in their communications department. And I broke down and cried one day at lunch while everybody else was gone because I never thought I was going to make it. And I remember praying, and I wasn't a born again Christian at that point. And I remember just sort of saying, I promise that if you ever, all I want is 3 swings at the plate, just 3. And I promise that if you do that and I make it, I always feel like when I had this dream, there was a river. I'm trying to find the bridge to the other side. The other side was that first job. And I promised, I said, if you give me that bridge, I'll keep the back door open. And I've had an internship program since I got into CNN 42 years ago. Helped a lot of people have that door open to get into the business, and mentored a lot of people here. It's been one of the great joys of my career, maybe the biggest part of my career. I'm way beyond the Valhallas and the American Pharaohs. All the people that you've helped, because so many people helped me. And it is, other than my own children and family, it is maybe the most important thing I've ever done. And to see all the success that those guys and ladies have had, to see women become successful in this when I got in, that was almost unheard of. There's a joy in my heart that goes beyond words. So whatever days I have left, I'm about legacy now. And what can I do to help you? And if I can open that door, if I can nudge a little bit, that's going to be something that I will do and go out of my way to do it. My advice to those people is, the problem now is people like you get into this and see how hard it is, and they don't last very long. The pay isn't very good. The hours are awful. You're working nights and weekends. I'm like, hey, newsflash. I started at $3.50 an hour at CNN. I was spending more on grad school when I left Boston University to go to CNN than I was making in Atlanta at the time. I worked relentlessly. I was working overnights during the week, and then I'd work weekend producing and finally going on the air in sports. You're going to have to be a gym rat for this. But for me, the question is, how badly do you want it? In the modern day, because of social media, technology, everybody's got a voice. You don't need to do this for a living. You have a voice. I just love talking about sports. There's a magic to it. It's a noble and honorable thing. And it's a wonderful distraction from life's brutal realities. And if that's why you're in the business, the money will come, the success will come, if you do it for the right reasons. But you're going to have to want it about as badly as anything you've ever wanted in your life. And that was me. This is all, once I found it, once I saw it and I could taste it and feel it, it was the only thing. It was 1A, 2, 10, 20, 100 on the list. It was first, last, everything in between. Those are the people we need more than ever. We need guys like you and ladies that have that kind of passion for it, that aren't doing it for the money, aren't doing it because they want to get their name in lights. They do it because they love talking sports, and the rest will come.
Awesome. And you got to love it, and you got to want it. And also, it helps to give back along the way. Great words of advice from Fred and Fred Cowgill. Thank you so much for coming on, 2-time Kentucky Sportscaster of the Year and winner of our 2021 award. Thank you again for your time. We hope to see you in Winston this summer as well.
Jake, it's my privilege. I will be there. You can count on it.
Awesome. Thank you again.